Hi there, my name's Blaine Coughlan, and with the imminent debut of Jodie Whittaker as the first female incarnation of the Doctor, I thought this would be the perfect time to share a few musings on the nature of regeneration. See? So, obviously, we all know, or we should do, that when a Time Lord's body wears out or is injured, or sometimes even if it's not, they can regenerate.
Try to understand. Regeneration, in my case...
Okay, sorry. First, one quick point of order. In my case. That's what he said. Does that mean the Doctor's regenerative process is different from all other Time Lords? Could his case be unique? It's worth thinking about. On with the clip.
Try to understand. Regeneration, in my case, is a swift but volcanic experience, a kind of violent biological eruption in which the body cells are displaced, changed, renewed, and rearranged. There are bound to be side effects.
Throughout the history of Doctor Who, there have been many regenerations. Mostly the Doctors, but also a few others.
Well, here we go again.
Okay, so what I want to explore here is regeneration in Doctor Who a completely random process, or can parts of it be controlled or at least influenced? And if so, what elements of motivation come into play, if any? For this musing, I'll be focusing chiefly on the Doctor. You might think that the bodies, faces he ends up with are always completely random, but if you look at the evidence, it might not be quite that simple.
That's the trouble with regeneration. You never quite know what you're going to get.
You never quite know what you're going to get. So does that imply that there are certain aspects that you do know or can know? The first on-screen regeneration, of course, was at the climax of the 10th Planet.
What happened to you, Doctor?
Oh, I'm not sure, my dear. Comes from an outside influence. Unless this old body of mine is wearing a bit thin.
Okay, so as you just heard then, from the clip I just edited in, the Doctor says, this old body of mine is wearing a bit thin. It's stated quite specifically in this case that the Doctor has been renewed. So right from the word go, it's implied the process is not entirely random. He doesn't just regenerate into any new body, his new body is visibly younger.
Okay, another quick aside. Over the years, some have posited that this is not in fact a regeneration, but a rejuvenation. That Patrick Troughton is not a new incarnation of the Doctor, but merely William Hartnell made young. Personally, I don't think Patrick Troughton looks anything like William Hartnell, so I'm not buying it. Back to me.
So that would initially suggest there might be some kind of intent, perhaps a Darwinian natural selection notion at play. The Doctor would only regenerate from older bodies into younger ones. However, further down the line, that hypothesis is compromised because from Peter Davison to Colin Baker and then Matt Smith to Peter Capaldi, the apparent age of the Doctor's body actually increases. So, if one body can be succeeded by any other body, younger or older, does that indeed mean the process of regeneration is completely random?
You don't understand regeneration, Mel. It's a lottery, and I've drawn the short plank.
So the Doctor describes regeneration as a lottery, which is defined as a situation whose success or outcome is governed by chance. Alternatively, it's a game won by selecting numbers or combinations of numbers. Now, these number of combinations can be enormous, but there are always parameters. There's always a limit. For example, of a selection of 6 numbers out of a possible 49, as in the UK lottery, there's actually 13,983,816 possible combinations. An enormous number, but significantly not infinite. So does that imply that for the Doctor and for Time Lords as a whole, their options are finite? Is there a catalogue of only the available faces available to them from which they can choose? It's plausible. I mean, in the War Games, the Doctor is actually shown a selection of these faces on a big screen.
Here is your first choice.
Oh, he's too old. Well, he's too fat, isn't he? No, he's too thin. Yes, that one's too young. Oh, no, that won't do at all.
So if there is a finite amount of personas available, does duplication occasionally occur? Well, seemingly, yes.
No last-minute requests?
Nothing. The Doctor seems to be taking it quite well, in fact.
Hello. Hi. Not interrupting anything.
At some point, Commander Maxwell and the Doctor have both chosen the same physical template, or had it chosen for them. Which brings us on to the next area. Can a Time Lord select a specific body?
Since you refuse to take the decision will be taken for you.
No, I never said that.
Yeah, I mean, the Time Lords at the Doctor's trial seem to have such abilities, but how much control does a regenerating Time Lord have over their own body? In some cases, it's more than you'd think.
If the Doctor can be young and strong, then so can I.
That seems fairly clear-cut. The Master is making a conscious decision to regenerate into a body more physically comparable to the 10th Doctor.
Do you ever look in the mirror and think, I've seen that face before?
Yes.
Really? When?
Well, every time I look in the mirror.
Oh, yes. Fair enough. Good point. My face is fresh on now.
And this clearly has a purpose and implies at least a subconscious ability for the Doctor to actually choose what body he ends up in.
Romana, the dog's got laryngitis. Sorry, I thought you were Romana. Have you seen it? What are you doing here?
I mean, here, Romana appears to have significant control of her transformations, even specifically responding to the Doctor's feedback.
I quite like this one, but it's a bit short.
Well, lengthen it then. Go on.
She comes back taller.
Too tall. Take it away.
She comes back shorter, etc. I mean, this also clearly demonstrates that the Doctor doesn't even have to look human at all. Maybe not even humanoid. Imagine the outcry if, instead of Jodie Whittaker, the 13th Doctor had actually been announced as an owl, or a flatworm, or a shrew. There's absolutely nothing to say he couldn't be.
Oh.
Don't you like it? I think it'll do very nicely. The arms are a bit long. I can always take them in.
In the event, amazingly, the form Romana settles on is that of Princess Astra, someone they met during their previous adventure. Now think about that for a second. Romana's body is an exact copy of someone who already exists. So intriguingly, could these be the only options available? The aforementioned finite catalogue of faces in the universe? What if Time Lords can only take on the appearance of someone who exists or has existed in the universe? Could the first Doctor only look the way he does because the Abbot of Amboise has lived? Could the second Doctor only have that particular face because Salamander has already possessed it? There aren't any actual on-screen human equivalents of the third Doctor, but I guess this guy from a deleted scene from Inferno is probably not a million miles off.
The Minister of Energy and Resource has made a statement about the disaster at the drilling project at Eastchester.
And the Peter Capaldi face is directly referenced as being rather familiar.
Sky's falling.
Therefore, has the Doctor's appearance always related to previously existing people, some of whom he's met, some he hasn't? Is there a person in the Doctor Who universe who looks exactly like Sylvester McCoy? Or Matt Smith? Or Tom Baker? What's the story with the curator? And what about this?
Oh, so you're my replacements. A dandy and a clown.
Well, goodbye, my boy. You did quite well. Quite well. It's reassuring to know that my future is in safe hands.
The original incarnation of the Doctor has encountered at least the first 12 of his successors.
The calculations alone would take hundreds of years.
Oh, hundreds and hundreds, but don't worry. I started a very long time ago.
According to War Council of Gallifrey, this is the Doctor.
You might say I've been doing this all my lives.
We're on. Ready? Commencing calculations. Over there.
Across the boundaries that divide one universe from another.
From the log on his coordinates. And for my next trick.
You? Or me? No. No. Yes. Yes, I'm very much afraid so. Do I become you? Well, there's a few false starts, but you get there in the end.
The first Doctor has seen all of these faces before he regenerates into them. Is this a massive bootstrap paradox of the type so favoured by Stephen Moffat? Does the Doctor only look the way he does throughout all of his lives because he's already seen the future and knows? Speaking of the future, in the wake of the seismic announcement of the 13th Doctor, I've seen several people object to the casting, saying Jodie Whittaker can't play the part because the Doctor is, quote, a white male Time Lord. But that's not correct. The truth is, the Doctor is a Time Lord who has thus far presented as white and male. However you spin it, it's now an established fact in the Doctor Who universe that Time Lords can switch gender and switch race when they regenerate. There are notable and irrefutable examples of this. Ohila from the Sisterhood of Khan lays the facts bare.
Time Lord science is elevated here on Khan. The change doesn't have to be random. Fat or thin, young or old, man or woman.
See that snake? The mark of the Corsair. Fantastic bloke. He had that snake as a tattoo in every regeneration. Didn't feel like himself unless he had the tattoo. Or herself a couple of times. Oh, she was a bad girl.
The Corsair is a Time Lord who has specifically changed gender following a regeneration. In the Sarah Jane adventures, the Doctor also explicitly states to Clyde he can change race.
Even your eyes are different. It's weird, because I thought the eyes would stay the same, you know. Can you change colour, or are you always white?
No, I can be anything.
And is there a limit? I mean, how many times can you change?
507.
Oh.
And indeed, we actually witnessed this in Hellbent with the General.
I want a neural block. Human compatible. Quickly, come on.
Med team to sector 52, extraction chamber 7, regeneration in progress. You alright, sir? Sorry, ma'am.
The General is a Time Lord who has switched gender and switched race following a regeneration.
Who's busy?
Please try to keep up. Short for mistress. Well, couldn't very well keep calling myself the master. Now could I?
And of course, the most famous example of recent years is the Master stroke Missy. Although, given the Master's previous patchwork and scattergun approach to regeneration, it's far from clear whether this was actually a natural process.
A new body, at last.
New body at last.
The Master's been scraping around nicking bodies for quite a while now, but since he was resurrected to fight in the Time War, maybe he now has a full new cycle of regenerations.
What happened to you?
The Time Lords only resurrected me because they knew I'd be the perfect warrior for a time war.
I mean, the Derek Jacobi to John Sim change seemed fairly standard, so there's no reason to assume that the arrival of the Missy incarnation was anything other than natural.
I'm Missy.
Although technically, we haven't yet seen John Sim regenerate directly into Michelle Gomez, so potentially there could be a few as yet unseen incarnations lurking about in between them. In any case, all indications are the Master is a Time Lord who has switched gender following a regeneration. So, the big question is, if the Doctor is capable of changing gender and or race whilst regenerating, and he undeniably is, why hasn't he done it before? Now possibly, it might just not have crossed his mind. We've seen before how the eventual outcomes of regenerations can be shaped and influenced to varying degrees, but maybe you have to be really concentrating in order to accomplish this. Most of the time when the Doctor's regenerating, he seems pretty preoccupied. In the war games, the process seems to be completely out of his control.
Stop! You're making me giddy!
Quite a few times, like in the 10th Planet, Planet of the Spiders, Time and the Rani, he's unconscious. In one extreme case, in Doctor Who, he actually appears to be dead before he regenerates. In these cases, obviously he's in no fit state to nudge the process down any particular road. Therefore, the next body might well just be a random selection from the available options in the catalogue. It's statistically unlikely that all these bodies just happen to be male, but it's not impossible. Another possibility as to why the Doctor's only ended up in male forms to date could be that he has a reason, subconscious or otherwise, to select a particular form. In other words, he's not actively avoiding being female, but he might have a specific individual in mind whose appearance he's already seen, just like Romana choosing Princess Astra. We can only speculate as to the reasons he chooses the arrogant and bullish persona of Commander Maxiel following his 5th regeneration. Possibly, the 5th Doctor had felt that that body had led to him being too much of a victim, too passive, and needed something more forceful and authoritarian going forward. That would certainly explain the in-your-face costume and erratic behaviour before he starts to settle down.
I might regenerate. I don't know.
Feels different this time.
Could this be the first time the Doctor deliberately chooses to adopt the form of someone he's recently seen? Is that why it feels different this time? Even more explicit is the case of the 12th Doctor. It's unequivocally stated that this face, previously seen on the Roman Caecilius from the fires of Pompeii, has been chosen for a reason.
Doctor, what's wrong with your face?
I think I know why I chose it. It's like I'm trying to tell myself something. I think I know what I'm trying to say.
Just someone. Not the whole town. Just save someone.
Come with me. I know where I got this face and I know what it's for.
Okay, what's it for?
To remind me. To hold me to the mark. I'm the doctor. And I save people. And if anyone happens to be listening and you've got any kind of a problem with that, to hell with you!
In The Night of the Doctor, he appears specifically to choose the form of what will become known as the War Doctor because he needs to be a warrior, albeit with a little help from the Sisterhood of Khan.
Fast or strong? Wise or angry? What do you need now? Warrior?
I don't suppose there's any need for a doctor anymore.
The Sisterhood of Khan seem to have no problem in precisely tailoring a regeneration. I guess if you're not actually dying or being shot at the time, the process becomes a bit easier to manage. In this case, there's no reason at all the Doctor couldn't have become a female warrior. But I suspect he'd seen someone previously who looked exactly like John Hurt, who was a complete badass, and that's why he decided on, or gravitated towards, that body.
Is it done?
So, in actual fact, the Doctor could easily have acquired a female body on any number of previous occasions. And as far as we know, he came closer to that than any of us had previously thought. Okay, during his first regeneration, he was unconscious. The second one, he didn't have a lot of control over. He was unconscious or dead during his third, sixth and seventh. The eighth was when he chose the John Hurt Warrior. Matt Smith to Peter Capaldi, he chose Caecilius to hold him to the mark. That only leaves a couple of regenerations left, during which he was conscious and lucid and could have decided or strived to become female. The fourth Doctor to the fifth Doctor is very interesting, and that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to explore his feminine side for the first time. For a while, the Doctor had been a strong, large, patriarchal figure in Tom Baker, and subsequently he became a lot more compassionate, emotionally intelligent and vulnerable.
I'm beginning to feel quite my old self. Or rather, my new self.
Of course, these traits needn't necessarily suggest a woman, but it would have fitted incredibly well. In the early days, Peter Davison already exuded some kind of frustrated single mum saddled with a bunch of unruly brats vibe.
Next time you want to escape from somewhere, walk.
Poor old Adric. Always in trouble.
And I try so hard.
Is it really that dangerous?
Do you really think I'd be making all this fuss if it weren't?
Later on, a potential female Fifth Doctor's relationship with Tegan and Turlough wouldn't have had to alter at all from what was presented on screen. And then later on, you'd have the Fifth Doctor and Peri, two enthusiastic and adventurous females, seeing the universe together, with the Doctor eventually sacrificing her life for Peri. Amazing.
Oh, goodbye, my dear chap. I must say I've had the time of my lives. Haven't we, Sarah Jane?
Have we? Well, I only have one life, and I think I've had too much already. Goodbye. Yes, it was really nice meeting you.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. It's nice meeting you too.
What?
I'll explain later.
Oh, and the 5 Doctors with a female Fifth Doctor would have been magical. Imagine at the end, I'm certainly not the man I was. How perfect would that have been? The final times the Doctor is conscious when he regenerates are also very, very interesting. There's no reason the War Doctor couldn't have become a female at that point, but he seemed to be mostly preoccupied with his ears. Christopher Eccleston into David Tennant, now that seems to be primarily influenced by Rose. After the horrors of the Time War, the Doctor is keen to explore new aspects of himself, and there's clearly an openness on his part to romantic feelings between himself and Rose. Note the jealousy he openly displays when Captain Jack arrives on the scene.
Okay, so he's vanished into thin air. Why is it always the great-looking ones who do that?
I'm making an effort not to be insulted.
I mean, men.
Okay, thanks. That really helped.
I don't ever think he'd ever dream of actually acting on any such feelings, but his ego clearly loves the idea of Rose obsessing over him from time to time. So, when the time comes for him to regenerate, with her standing right in front of him, of course, subconsciously or otherwise, he's going to end up in the dashing, attractive form of David Tennant, where the Doctor comes closer than ever before to a romantic relationship with his companion. Now, David Tennant and Billie Piper have both said in interviews they basically played this relationship as a love story. Now, the 10th Doctor, at the end of his life, he is also conscious, with the perfect opportunity to shape or influence his subsequent transformation. Again, the nature of what actually happens makes perfect sense.
With me, I can do so much more! So much more! But this is what I get. My reward. But it's not that!
So he's just been raging that he could have done so much more. So it's only natural that he becomes younger and more vibrant than ever before in order to maximise his time in that particular body. This plan comes to fruition emphatically because he does indeed spend more time in this body than any other to this point. There's no reason he couldn't have become female at this point though. So, finally, if the Doctor is imminently to become female, is there now a specific reason for this? I think these might be a few considerations.
So you're going to do this? Let them all think you're dead?
It's the only way, then they can all forget me. I got too big, Dorian, too noisy. Time to step back into the shadows.
Indeed. In Matt Smith's second season, the subtext is the Doctor has become too noisy, too recognisable and well known. Subsequently, he decides to keep a very low profile. Then he becomes the president of the world, so balls that up. So, this time, to make a better job of being discreet, what better plan? Change gender. It worked for the Master. Even the Doctor failed to recognise his old frenemy after the change.
Who are you?
I am Missy.
Oh, last little thing. This in itself is quite intriguing. Usually, Time Lords do recognise each other, even after they've regenerated, like Asmael in the Twin Dilemma, or Drax in the Armageddon Factor. So what's different here? Maybe the Master-Missy transformation wasn't so natural after all. Maybe it was something a bit more complex. Huh?
A second reason for the Doctor now to become female could be the Master herself. Now, obviously the Doctor and the Master have been rivals forever, interfering with each other's time experiments, etc. The Doctor gets a sonic screwdriver, the Master gets himself a laser screwdriver. Now this will be the Doctor's first regeneration since encountering the Master's female form. And knowing the Doctor, he's probably really put out that the Master has utilised this simple innovation before he has. So therefore, he'll have it in his mind to rectify the situation at the earliest possible opportunity.
Is the future going to be all girl? You can only hope.
A third reason why the Doctor might now want to become female is his latest travelling companion, Bill Potts. Now the Doctor has always been somewhat ratty when companions decide to leave him. He rarely takes it gracefully. When Ian and Barbara right near the beginning decide to take their leave, he gets really knocked.
You idiots! You are absolute idiots!
We are not idiots. We want to go home.
Yes, home. I want to sit in a pub and drink a pint of beer again. I want to walk in a park and watch a cricket match. Above all, I want to belong somewhere, do something, instead of this aimless drifting around in space.
Aimless? I tried for 2 years to get you both home.
Well, you haven't been very successful, have you?
How dare you, young man? How dare you, sir?
Also, when Adric suggests he wants to return to Pterodon, he gets his filth all out of whack again.
You've done it before. Planets is not designed for East space, Nissa, tell him.
Tell him what?
He wants to go home.
To Alzarius?
No to Pterodon. And that would involve the TARDIS going back into E-space.
The doctor's right. It would be very dangerous.
I could plot a course.
How do you calculate negative coordinates?
I have the mathematical skill.
It would also involve passing through the CVE. Now, you can't calculate random coordinates.
The monitor on Logopolis indicated they were not random.
You do not have the monitor skill, Adric. And even if you did, I am not going back into E-space.
When Leela and Romana decide to do their own thing, they barely get a goodbye before he's rushed off in the TARDIS.
Doctor,
Yes.
I will miss you.
I'll take care of him.
I'll miss you. You were the noblest Romana of them all.
Even the cuddly season 24 Sylvester McCoy gets really tetchy when Mel tells him she's off.
I suppose it's time I should be going.
Oh.
Time that I left.
Yes, well, you could be right. Time for you to go.
Before I go,
Well, this time.
Doctor.
Well, if you must go.
Before I go, I'd just like to say.
No point, Mel. No point hanging around wasting time.
No, I'm not going until I've said my piece. I just wanted
There's
to
no
say
time, Mel.
The Doctor has a massive ego, he always has done. As with Rose, although there's never any explicit suggestion of a sexual relationship, the Doctor is undoubtedly flattered by his companions looking up to him, Amy and Clara especially.
Oh, you are sweet, Doctor, but I really wasn't suggesting anything quite so long term.
But you're human, you're Amy, you're getting married in the morning. Mystery wrapped in an enigma, squeezed into a skirt that's just a little bit too tight. What are you?
Clara, I'm not your boyfriend.
I never thought you were.
I never said it was your mistake.
Now, although he'd never do anything about it, the Doctor cannot help wanting to be wanted. Now, his latest companion, Bill, is gay, and therefore she's not interested in him romantically at all. During her final, "You know I like women my own age" speech, the Doctor's reaction suggests that he thinks she's about to say, "I've changed my mind," or "I'll make an exception for you." But hilariously, she doesn't.
Hey, well, you know how I'm usually all about women and kind of people my own age.
Yeah.
Glad you knew that.
Now, it's not beyond the realms of plausibility at all for the Doctor to take this as a personal snub and ultimately react in a very petty, careful what you wish for way. Hence, he becomes a woman. So, bearing in mind some or all of these possibilities, the idea of the Doctor becoming female at this stage in his life is pretty much inevitable. How it all works out? Time will tell. So in conclusion, regeneration is a lot less random than you might think. It's entirely possible that the only faces Time Lords can ever wear are ones that already exist in the universe. And if you put your hearts and mind to it, regeneration can be quite precisely controlled. Whatever the truth of the matter, one thing is certain. If the future happens to be all girl, great. A breaking of rules, a stretching of boundaries, a straying from the norm. These are all things that have always been at the very core of what the Doctor stands for.
I'd hate to have to live my life by some boring old rule book like you do.
Innovation, unpredictability, surprise, and newness are all things to be enthusiastically embraced, especially for a long-running TV series. Life depends on change and renewal. Without it, we wouldn't survive. Until we meet again.
Oh, so that's it. You've been renewed, have you? I've been renewed, have I? That's it. I've been renewed. It's part of the TARDIS. Without it, I couldn't survive.
What? Part of the TARDIS? Oh, come on, I thought I got my head round all this. Okay, but no, that's enough. That's enough for today. And don't ask me about the brain of Morbius either.